We got breaking news. It's important. It's here on the Meidas Touch Network. ABC is reporting, and so I believe it's true, that Armando Abrego Garcia is coming, although they called him Kilmer there, is coming back to the United States. He's been ordered to be returned, but not in the Supreme Court Xinis deportation context. He's apparently coming back to Tennessee to face charges filed a month ago for quote-unquote human trafficking. What does it mean for the Judge Xinis case in Maryland, where she just gave yesterday permission to the opposing side, the Abrego Garcia side, to file motions for contempt and for sanctions? What does it mean there? Let's bring in Karen Friedman Agnifilo, my illustrious colleague for Legal AF. We got on the air as quickly as possible. ABC is the one that broke the story. Karen, why don't you talk about what we know about the return of Abrego Garcia, and then we can wrap it into what does it mean for the pending case before Judge Xinis.
Well, a while back, Popok, we heard that there was this sealed indictment of Mr. Abrego Garcia in Tennessee for trafficking, human trafficking. He's alleged to have been part of a migrant smuggling ring, which is news to everybody, because by all accounts, this gentleman is a husband, a father, a hardworking person, and not a member of these gangs that they're saying he's a member of. And after mistakenly being deported, after getting yelled at by judges, after having injunctions, after being ordered to bring him back, after even the Supreme Court agreeing that you have to facilitate the bringing him back, they were losing this in all of the courts and in the courts of public opinion as well. And so I think they finally have realized that they're going to stop the pain and bring him back, and he's on his way back. But of course they have to say, oh, but he's coming back to face these criminal charges. So it's sealed because he hasn't been arraigned on it yet. That's what happens with an indictment. If it hasn't been brought to court yet, it remains sealed, but someone talked about it. And so they're going to bring him back and then slap some pretty serious federal charges on him and keep him incarcerated here. They just want to, in some ways, I think they just want to stop the bleeding, because in this case, they were absolutely bleeding and losing everywhere in this regard.
So what we know about in prior reporting is that while living in Tennessee and doing construction, according to his wife, he would sometimes drive some of the construction workers to the construction site. And sometimes they would pile into a truck, and I've seen that on the roads here in Miami, 4, 5, 6, or 8 at a time. There was a traffic stop on a highway by Tennessee Highway Patrol, and they looked in the back and saw a whole bunch of people, and they decided, after consultation with the FBI, which I think was under Joe Biden at the time, to release him on the traffic stop. That is the claim. According to the wife at the time, or Abrego Garcia's wife, she said her husband sometimes transported groups of fellow construction workers between job sites while he was working in Tennessee at the time. He's a Maryland guy. Now, you have a month ago, we thought it was odd that they filed this charges against him in Tennessee. Now we know why Tennessee. And you're right. Now it's just running interference for them having to finally give in and listen to the 9-0 command of the United States Supreme Court that they must facilitate his return from an El Salvadoran jail and bring him back to the United States, not to face charges for this ridiculous fake criminal thing that we'll get more details about. And if he is, then to face charges with notice and due process and a lawyer and a federal judge and all of that, the way he's supposed to do it here, not in El Salvador. We saw them moving the cheese around a little bit, right? After Senator Van Hollen went and visited him, they brought him out of CCOT, that max security prison. They put Abrego Garcia in a better prison. So we got that to happen, but they're still refusing and rejecting all attempts by Judge Xinis in Maryland to tell her what they were doing to facilitate his return. And this is probably as news to her as it is to the rest of the public that we're reporting on here for the Meidas Touch Network, that he's now been returned. Now let's follow this on the geography map, on the map, right? He comes into Tennessee to be arraigned before either a magistrate or a federal judge in Tennessee. Again, we'll do more reporting on it here. Okay, Judge Xinis is in Maryland. She's got another case, not civil, has to do with immigration law, but to which she just allowed the lawyers for Abrego Garcia, which is Quinn Emanuel, a firm that knows Donald Trump well, they used to represent him, and the ACLU, right? They're there. And now they know the guy's coming back, and he's in Tennessee in a detention center, all right? She's got her own proceedings that she has jurisdiction over and over him. But criminal, as you know well, Karen, often takes precedent over a civil matter. So the good news is he's here. He's in Tennessee. What do you think happens next with Judge Xinis trying to assert control to be able to give him also the writ of habeas corpus due process rights that the Supreme Court says he's entitled to?
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. Like I think that case was taking on a life of its own too, where she was about to hold the government in contempt, and I think she's going to still want answers, and I don't know that she's going to allow this to moot out her case or to stay her case because of so much else that was going on there. I also think this Tennessee case is slightly suspect. I mean, he was pulled over in a car, and they let him go, right? Like, it just seems a little bit weird that now all of a sudden he's charged with this human trafficking for driving workers back and forth, right? That just doesn't seem like they have a very strong case here. So it'll be interesting to see if this has any legs. But I don't know that Judge Xinis, given all that's happened in her courtroom, I don't know that she is going to let this go. That'll be interesting to watch.
I agree with you. Judges are on to Donald Trump. We just had the day after Judge Xinis ruled on the moving towards contempt. Judge Boasberg in D.C. certified a class of 250 people not named Abrego Garcia, who he wants notice by next week from the government what they're going to do to facilitate their return for their habeas corpus rights. And he said in his ruling that he's on to the quote unquote ruse of the government acting like they really don't have control over anything in El Salvador as a way to avoid federal court's oversight and jurisdiction. He called it a ruse. He also started his opinion with a comparison of Kafka and the famous book, the novel, The Trial, and to what these people are being subjected to. So I think you're right. This obvious ruse of this phony traffic stop that the Biden administration already rejected, now being brought back to life and resuscitated in order to give them cover, right? Here's what the traffic stop was all about. There's a body cam footage at the time from 2022. He was pulled over by Tennessee troopers. They questioned Abrego Garcia, who was driving. They had suspicions of human trafficking because they had 8 people in the car without luggage, but he said he was going to a construction site. When they asked him to provide his license and his insurance, he said he didn't know where the insurance card was in the car because it was his boss's car. And there is audio about this. He was driving on his expired license, but he was given a warning about the stop.
And released.
They and so at no point during the traffic stop, yeah, okay. So I was looking at the lawyer's comment for Abrego Garcia, which is, yeah, if they got a traffic stop, he still gets his day in court. So we're now going to watch a battle between the federal judge in Tennessee and Judge Xinis, supported by the 9-0 decision of the United States Supreme Court, about, if I were her, and we're going to check the docket, it'll probably be late today. She'll issue an order to command his appearance in her courtroom and to get an order to show cause to know more information about why she's been jerked around. As she once said in one of her court hearings, I feel like a cat and you've got the ball of string, Trump administration and DOJ, and I don't like that feeling. So
that's why. Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's why they brought him back, because she was about to hold them in contempt. And I think you're going to see Judge Boasberg, the Supreme Court, Judge Xinis, and every other judge cite to Abrego Garcia to prove you do have control. You can bring them back.
That was exactly what you're right on point, Karen, as always. Boasberg said yesterday that it's obvious that the United States has constructive control over the prisoners that are there. He's looked at whatever the agreements and the receipts are, and that was his ruling, which is how he got to certify the class. And now they can say, well, we only brought him back because What? You brought him back. You have him on a string, and you're able to bring him and the other 250 back, which is, like you said, is going to be very interesting to Judge Boasberg. So watch carefully, as we will, what Judge Xinis does next. As I've joked, it's not really a joke. Hell hath no fury like a federal judge scorned.
That's true.
Especially one that's been supported and affirmed 9-0 by the United States Supreme Court. And I wouldn't want it. I'm sure
against
she's going to
Donald Trump. I mean, that's
right.
Astounding, right?
Right. How do you get them to agree on a lunch order? Who had the tuna salad?
That's true.
Let alone on an immigration. Well, he's been losing. We'll end it this way. The one consistent thing, despite wins and losses, 96% losing rate, 72% of Trump judges and all that. The consistent thing, even though he's 50-50 at the Supreme Court, is he loses, and loses big, every Immigration, Deportation, Alien Enemies Act where he doesn't provide due process, notice in the United States, and tries to take them in the middle of the night away from federal jurisdiction. That is a losing hand that he's been pressing. And now some genius, Stephen Miller, came up with the idea, why don't we bring it back for the Tennessee human trafficking stop? I don't know where that voice came from, but it sounded more like Michael Cohen than Stephen Miller. But in any event, keep an eye on, and we will keep a close eye on Judge Xinis. For further reporting and updates, come back to Meidas Touch Network, and of course, over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Subscribe to both places, and you'll never miss something that's important at the intersection of law and politics. Karen, I'm so glad we were texting and said, let's do this together. Even though we just were together on Wednesday, I like to do more of these with you, not less.
Me too.
Right.
Count me in.
All right, great. Until our next time, shout out to the Meidas Mighty and the Legal AFers. In collaboration with the Meidas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.